I sang along, but when I got to the A before the word wretch in the first verse, John Henry pushed his tiny hands into my chest and his face away from mine. I had held the mid-belt note for a little bit too long. His face broke, and he cried. I stopped singing. He was 16 months old. Music makes me cry, too. I am often overwhelmed by the beauty or emotional resonance of a voice or composition. I've considered it one of my more annoying afflictions, that I can become a sobbing mess when I hear a certain vocal tone or a particularly beautiful conglomeration of notes. But I had never seen that response in a toddler. And what I saw in John Henry that Sunday afternoon wasn't a feature of his personality. It wasn't a development. It was more as if something had gone missing. I had seen him display little behaviors that I thought were maybe odd. He had a tendency to repeatedly turn objects over in his hands, or play with one part of a toy instead of its entirety. He would rub his legs together against textured floor surfaces or in the bathtub as soon as he could sit on his own. We called it crickets. But I didn't know that Sunday afternoon that I was looking at a human being who couldn't manage the information he received in a typical fashion. I didn't know it until I saw him burst into what I could tell were tears of emotion when I hit that note. I didn't know it until my mind raced around wondering why he'd cried them, and then realized that he had been using his words less and less in the weeks that preceded that day, that he had shuddered when he heard the drum kit on the Friday before its sound check, and that he had stopped turning his head toward anyone who said his name. I didn't know until then that my baby very likely had autism. Music has provided myriad revelations for me throughout my life, but this was one I didn't welcome. I tried everything I could think of to bring him back. Several times each day, I practiced with him the words he had learned, even more than I had before. I tried to teach him new ones and would tentatively allow a wave of relief to come over me when he would try to imitate sounds or said things such as key for turkey or bala for banana. I dutifully logged his behaviors, any little thing he uttered that sounded like a word, and any acknowledgement of another person. I tried to convince myself that what was happening wasn't happening, all the while confirming that it was indeed happening when I would check the lists of features of autism that I found on the internet against his progressing distance from who he had been. I began calling doctors. Then we started down the road to an official diagnosis despite everyone, his pediatrician included, telling me that my sweet and social child couldn't possibly have autism. Just look at him. There's no way he could be autistic, she said. John Henry began speech and occupational therapy, and even his speech therapist suggested that he had a sensory processing disorder and not autism, though his words had almost completely gone away by the time we made our way to her. He received the diagnosis the following March when he was administered the usual battery of tests that determine whether a person lands on the spectrum or not. By that time, we'd started to adjust to the reality that we'd likely be told he did. I had stopped singing in my full voice around John Henry. I would sing the baby songs, Bingo, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and others that didn't require any velocity, and he didn't seem to mind. But if a song or my voice held any hint of poignancy or hit that mid-belt place, it was too much for him. I was careful not to forget myself and break into song, as I had been wont to do for as long as I could remember. It was heartbreaking. I knew it wasn't about volume or pitch. It was about his becoming overwhelmed by the way my singing made him feel. If a human face is the hardest thing in the world to look at because it is so complicated and holds so much information, then the human voice must be the hardest thing to hear and make sense of for the same reasons. It all made me turn quiet. I felt as if we had lost a way to bond on top of everything else. I thought John Henry might shy away from music for his entire life. I couldn't imagine what that would be like for a person, let alone one who was born into the family that he was. I didn't know and couldn't imagine an existence without it. I struggled with his struggle, and I worried about what his father and I had passed on to him. Could it have been our faults that he was so sensitive to music? Music, above all else, has always given us both pathways with which to connect to the world. It has, in different ways, saved us. What we cannot say, we can